All right, welcome back to another episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. We have a great spotlight show for you today. This is Blake Weissman. Blake is an up-and-coming powerhouse in the venture capital world. That means startups, for those of you who don't know. He is dedicated to demystifying the VC landscape for aspiring inventors, startup professionals, and first-time founders. With a heart rooted in purpose, Blake's journey began at just 17 when he began volunteering in hospice care. This ignited a lifelong passion for meaningful, people-driven work, from fostering Black and Jewish relationships with Spill the Honey Foundation to guiding underrepresented professionals through the challenging terrain of venture capital with Hawk Ventures. Blake has always prioritized dignity and respect in every endeavor. Now, as the driving force behind BackpackVC, Blake bridges the gap between founders and investors, offering bespoke, no strings attached support that's transforming how the next generation approaches funding. Whether it's through training venture analysts or creating unique programs for good-hearted individuals, Blake is all about building communities that elevate and empower. And when not shaping the future of VC, Blake is quietly unlocking the hidden value in membership communities, always striving to make the world a little better, one connection at a time. All right. Blake, welcome to the show.
All right. Drew, thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Yeah, man. So that's a great little bio there. Let me just give a personal plug. Our relationship started back in May at this little thing called Innovate. So hashtag Innovate24.
Yeah.
That's going to be the new South by Southwest of Kentucky here. Brian Wallace put us together. And here's how we met. I said to Brian, hey, I hate going to conferences where I don't know anybody. And I want to do this thing where we go to your conference and my job is not to speak on stage. My job is just to meet people and make sure that other people get to meet people. And that's what I did. And he said to me without flinching, he said, you need to meet Blake. I'm putting you together with Blake.
Yeah.
And I was like, how cool is that? And Blake was out of Vegas at the time. And we ended up rooming together like a week and a half later or whatever. And have been fast friends ever since. Super, super fun. And what a privilege to get to know you, sir. I'm glad you're on the show.
Gotta reciprocate back real quick. Drew's so creative. He's like, hopefully this will turn out on the camera, but he created yeah. It's this says connection connector. It's gonna blur out because of the video, but basically Drew, before we even started, he was getting out his laminating paper. He said, we're gonna put these on, this is gonna be us. He came up with a name, and kudos to Drew's creativity. One of the most creative people I've met. And we had a blast. We had a great time.
It was super fun. So, hey, look, Blake and I are the world leading professionals in offstage coaching connection. So if you have a conference and you need connectors and want to give us free food in a hotel room, we will be there. It was a great time. It was a lot of fun.
It was a very good time.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I think so that I'm going to take that as a jumping off point. Actually, no, I'm not. Before we get rolling, you must pass the gauntlet like all others. So we have a question and answer session. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Tea or coffee?
Oh, tea.
Tea. There we go. Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, pancakes for sure.
Pancakes. All right. This is a controversial one. Acoustic or electric?
Ooh.
Okay. Fancy food like a street vendor like a luxury hotel or like a street vendor?
I missed the last part, but I guess it was less fancy food. So I'll go with less fancy food.
Less fancy food. Okay, good.
Very less fancy food. Give me like home baked cookies and I'm good to go.
Okay. I love it. Okay. Are you a spontaneous person or plan the whole trip out?
I'm both. I like to plan, but also I like to plan in spontaneity.
You like to plan in spontaneity. We're going to pull that thread because Blake, he shows up on LinkedIn and he's like, I'm on a plane to go into New York. Who's going to meet with me? And that was it. That was the plan. I'm going to New York what was the phrase? Until it happens.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was like, oh, I have 4 kids. I would have been, man, if it wasn't for that, I would have been there in a minute. We would have done it
Yep.
together. It would have been
It would
awesome.
have been fun if you would have joined next time.
Okay. We're all right, upping the ante a little bit here. Is golf a sport?
Yeah. Very, very competitive sport. What do you mean?
I no, there's all right, here's my deal with golf. There's no time limit and there's no active defense.
Does sport need defense in order to be a sport? I mean, the one thing I would think is like sweating. I think if not for the hot and humid conditions and you're not sweating, I wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't see it as a sport that you like profusely sweat. Like I would say working out for me, a metric is like, did I sweat during workout? So if I didn't
Gotcha.
sweat, it's probably not a workout. I'm not saying the same thing.
Now I agree. Golf is a great way to spend time and it's a good workout, but it doesn't have like nobody's getting a concussion. I don't think it counts.
Yeah, I
All
play
right.
tennis, so no one's getting a concussion in that sport either.
Oh, well, that is also true. Any sport in which you're actively winning love is okay. Should you tip in a restaurant that is self-serve?
It's so tough because now they have those square counters that if they put it there and there's $1, $2, and they're looking, now they've designed it to where you feel guilty if you don't. So I think if I don't feel pressured, it depends on my mood. It really does. It depends on my mood that day. If I know that, oh, they were really nice, okay, yeah, no problem. Some days I should be more generous. I'll just say I should be more generous when it comes to that.
I like it. Acceptable. Okay. And the hardest hitting question of the entire episode: what color is this dress?
I can't believe this question still exists. Today, present day, I see it as dark. I see it as blue and black.
No. Ah. My wife also sees it as blue and black, and I begrudgingly admit that the science says you are correct, but only against my better judgment. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that question round. You did okay. I'm going to give you 13 points out of 47.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. All right. So this is the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. So I'm going to throw you a leadership statement, and I'm going to just get your thoughts on it here. So the law of solid ground. Trust is the foundation of leadership. How do you feel about that? Do you have any stories where you've seen that to be the case? The law of solid ground. Trust is the foundation of leadership.
So I love the concept of leadership because it's so applicable across more than just business, just in life. I think trust is more than just this person knows that I'm not going to screw them over, therefore they're going to be more productive. I think it applies to friendships, to relationships, to family members. If trust isn't there as a core principle, it's going to be very hard to do things well. It's not really going to mesh that well. And I think when you're trying to lead, take a company, take an organization, when you're trying to lead to go from point A to point B, it's very hard to go from those points smoothly when you don't have trust. So I think how do you then, the question is, if trust is important, then how do you establish trust? A lot of ways, but I think one of them is being very open and being clear. Sometimes when it's hard to be open and hard to be clear and hard to be transparent. But I think those moments of time and then setting up boundaries before you get into any of the confrontation of like, if we get into confrontation, here's what to expect. And I'm going to be as upfront as possible prior to the confrontation happening. I think expectation setting before you go into anything, then you know it's likely that we're going to happen, that we're going to dive into some form of confrontation. Hopefully not, but it's likely. So here's how we're going to go about it before it even starts. So I like planning in beforehand and then being as open as possible to create an environment.
I super like that because the only thing we know for sure about a relationship is that we're going to be in conflict at some point, right? Because we're two different people and we both want the same piece of pizza, or like there's a limited number of resources. Now I'm definitely a make the pie bigger type of a guy, but there's going to be conflict, and then deciding who you're going to be and how you and I are going to deal with it. I think it's great. I think it's great advice.
Yeah. And I just one more quick thought is I think one principle that I stand by pretty strongly is the only thing that is constant is change. And I think with confrontation, that's very likely constant. That's very likely the only thing that's going to be constant. You know that there's going to be some form of change happening, which happens to be potentially conflict or confrontation. So how are you going to deal with it beforehand instead of thinking it's all going to be roses and butterflies? And hopefully it is, but it's not always going to be roses and butterflies. So how do you plan for that?
Yeah, I like it. Well, speaking of change, there's probably no greater place in the industry for change than venture capitals, startups, and innovation. So,
Yeah.
why did you decide to live in the choppy waters off the coast? Why not fish the well-known channels?
I was not planning to at all. I was building I was helping build a nonprofit called Spill the Honey Foundation in college. And I
Mhm.
reached out to a professor of mine and I said, listen, I'm building this full time. I'm in school full time. I need some independent credit study. And he said, come to my office. Let's talk. And after we talked, he said, you really got to meet one of my former students, one of my alumni. He runs a fund. You should talk with him, get some for-profit experience. Because all my experience with Warren, I was only, like you said before, I was only nonprofit, very purpose-driven, and still am. And he's like, you should really get some for-profit experience, talk with this guy. And I said, no, I'm really busy. But he convinced me, he said, no, you got to talk with him. Fine.
Good leader. There you go.
Yeah,
I love it.
good leaders. Now you got to talk about it. All right, fine. So we ended up talking for a couple hours. I ended up working for him for a couple years, and I was at his fund. I was first an analyst, and then I was helping build out programming post analyst work. And so what we learned in the VC industry is a couple of things. One, it's extremely hard to break into. Two,
Mm.
founders, investors, it's almost as if they're in the Tower of Babel situation where a founder thinks they should be speaking one way and the investor is thinking the exact opposite thing and saying, no, please don't tell me about your product. Tell me everything else. And so we were thinking, well, why don't we create programming to solve both the gap of founder and investor and then also help people break into the industry? And so we ran programming. It ended up going pretty well. And then post the third program, Drew Leahy, he basically said, Blake, go start your own company. Go keep building this. I think this was great. I'm moving to New Zealand. It was not me. He said, I'm moving to New Zealand. Go do this thing. I believe in you. And he was definitely one of the biggest pushes, him and March Haben. They said, we believe in you. We love what you're doing. Go build your own company out of this. And that's how it was formed.
That's exciting. I love that you bring up that they're speaking two different languages. When I coach corporate world, everything about corporate world is win the contract and then streamline operations. And then when I coach medium or small businesses, the question is keep the cash flow in the positive and then just execute the thing that you're doing, grow 20%, something like that. But the startup world and VCs, at first I thought startup and VCs, like the two characters, like you said, the two pieces were the same people, but you're right. They're very different. The innovator, the startup person is trying to change the world. He's got this brand new product. He's put a lot of energy into product market fit, discovering that. But the VCs think differently, and they don't think like a bank. They don't think like a small business. They don't think like corporate. So if you could kind of boil down, how do VCs think that's so different than everybody else?
I'll tell you from my experience. I'm not going to speak for all VCs. I'll tell you from my experience of working with the fund that I was at, and then also having a few close friends within the industry. This is what I know. What I know is founder comes in and says, I have this unbelievable product, like you were saying. VC is thinking, great. The assumption is the product works. That's already the assumption. Of course it works. What they're thinking is a series of thoughts. First, who is this founder? Who's the founding team? Why are they the right people to do it? What makes them unique? Were they at a law firm in the law industry for 25 years? So they have expert knowledge in the law industry and they know it so intimately well that they know all the pain points and therefore they're going to be the right people to do it. Industry wise, is it dominated by Amazon and a couple other big players? Are they just pushing a boulder up an unsolvable hill where they're just going to get crushed? Or on the other hand, is it pushing up a hill that those people, the Amazons and all that, they're so excited to or scared that they're going to come in and take their business that they'll exit and eat them up? Scale wise, is this a scale? One of the biggest things is scale. Is this a scalable business? I think that's one of the biggest things from a small business that's bootstrapping as opposed to a company that is trying to raise venture money? Is this scalable? It may be an unbelievable business. They may be making $500,000 in revenue. That is a small business that has no intention to be venture backable. The venture perspective is this scalable? Thank you for
Yeah, I think that I love that. Who is the team? And I think that we, like, in corporate world, all of the management training is based on how to get the most out of the team that you have, which is a very different statement than, is this the right team? Like, those, they sound similar because they both use the word team, but the venture capitalists know this thing doesn't scale if I don't have the right team. I need to cut the fat. I need the high quality talent or the good connections or both. That's very different than corporate. And then in the small business world, again, you're trying to take care of your family, or everybody becomes a family. So the people, and you're trying to help people mature, and you're trying to make some good, solid connections, but that's not scaling, right? And here, I just love that it's very different. They do think very different, and I love that you brought it out that way. It's fantastic.
So I saw a neuroscientist who had a company, and he was trying to speak with an investor, and he was telling all about his neuroscience information, and brilliant dude. And he was talking about this company that he was building based on the principles, but the investor was thinking, this isn't what I'm looking for. This isn't what I'm looking for. So it's so interesting. It's such a common phenomena of this complete 360 distance. Maybe if you're really invested in the startup and VC world, maybe you know how to speak to them, but most people aren't. And that causes a lot of problems. Yeah.
So the product works. That's the given. I think that actually you're going to get a foghorn for that. Hold on a second. Let me find it. All right. So can you say that one more time for me?
Yeah. So I think some of the biggest problems that are caused from these founders and investors is the founder, let's say a neuroscientist, they try to communicate their company from a neuroscientist perspective. But because they're not so invested in the startup and VC ecosystem, the VC is just thinking, I don't want to hear this information. It's not relevant to me. And so that causes this gap and this 360 divide where they're almost speaking different languages with each other. And that causes huge problems.
Yeah. And that's why you need a coach, right? That's why you need a friend that can come alongside. I've been saying this to a number of folks. I've been watching the Olympics, right? The Olympics, during the filming of this, we just got done with the Olympics. Every one of the gold medalists in the Olympics has a bench full of coaches, right?
Yeah.
Those coaches are good, but they're not gold medalists. I mean, maybe some of them should be, but they're really good at their piece of the pie, right? If you think about American football, you have a defensive coach, you have an offensive coach, you have a overall coach, you have other sub coaches, right? I noticed that there are two groups of people have coaches. People that are just starting out and they say, I don't know what I'm doing here. I need to figure out how to play the game. So they get a coach. The second group of people that gets coaches is pro ball players. Right. If you're at the collegiate level, if you're at the pro level, you get a coach, and you know you need a coach because at the lower level, the coach is saying, this is how you perform as an individual. And at the higher level, they're saying, this is how you succeed as a team at the pro level. And you know who doesn't have coaches? Everybody in the middle.
In the middle.
All the people that say they're too good for a coach are also not winning gold medals, right? So if you're a startup and you're like, hey, it's time for going to get funding. If you're a VC firm and you're like, hey, I'm looking for more flow, this is a great connection point for you, right? Who else do you work with? Who is your ideal client? Or can you think of any great stories? Actually, tell me the communities that you work with. I think you gave me a slide on this.
Yeah. So this is how I think ecosystem building in respect to this niche. So I see it as two sides with one side that comes in on both sides. So side one are founders and also people who are interested in just the venture ecosystem. That's potentially someone who's a full-time professional. We've had people that have come from big consulting firms, McKinsey. We've had people come from MBA programs, the Northwestern, Penn, University of Michigan MBA programs. We've had all different types of professionals who are full-time. They don't have plans to transition, but they're very interested in the space. And then we have people who actually want to transition full-time because it's really hard to get into VC. Those are people who want to break in for full-time. Though that's one side. The second side are the investors themselves. These could be pre-seed investors. These could be seed stage, Series A. These could be angel investors. These could be syndicates, all different types of investors that provide their real-time feedback. Because one of the biggest problems is those people are super hard to access. Just because everyone wants to, I was talking with a friend yesterday, a couple days ago. He said, if I go somewhere at an event, I really don't want to go because if I show up, I know that everyone's, and he wasn't saying this arrogantly. He was just saying, I know everyone's showing up and saying, here's my toothbrush, here's my new toothbrush, and here's why it's amazing. They see this person as a wad of money, and that person, I don't think any person wants to feel like that. That's an awful feeling. So why would you get real-time feedback from those people when you're just going up to them and saying, please give me please give me, a big chunk of your money and I don't care about who you are. It just creates a weird divide. So anyways, that's the second part. That's part B of those people. Thankfully, we've built very good relationships with our friends in that space who are comfortable giving their real-time feedback because they know we're not just going to go up to them and say, please give me your money and all that stuff. That's not the purpose. The third layer is everyone in between. Building a company it takes a village. It takes an absolute village. It takes coaches. It takes people like you, Drew. It takes people who are unbelievable at marketing, people at go-to-market strategy, people at RevOps, people, you name it, creative visionaries, whatever it is. All those people, that's the third layer that I see. So we'll bring in those communication strategists. So we'll bring in, Robbie Crabtree was a good example. He's helped founders raise almost $1 billion worth of capital. So he would come in and he'd speak at our sessions and he'd break down, here is how you communicate effectively. He was a former lawyer. Here's how you communicate effectively. Obviously, we're going to want to listen to a guy like that because he knows what he's talking about, which then helps the founder or the person who wants to break into VC or the person who's a professional who just wants to get more immersed in the ecosystem. Now they know here are the players that are involved in the space. And now I can actually speak the language because the end output is now you can speak the language and you are a part of the ecosystem. That is really the function of it.
I love that. I love that so much because, for instance, I have a couple of folks that I go to for marketing. I don't do marketing. I am an engineer. I'm a recovering engineer. Admitting it is the first step. I no longer look at my own shoes all the time. I sometimes look at other people's shoes and even look at them in the eye. Like I'm recovering. Marketing is not my strong suit, right? And running marketing campaigns is not. So I go to these two guys that I love. My niche, right, is leadership work and operational work. Like if you're stuck and you're tired, and actually I work with several entrepreneurs, like startup folks, because you have this, you go from I'm hustling and man, like the startup, the first year of getting something off the ground, first of all, you have no money, you have no funding, you have this idea that hasn't been proven in the market.
Yeah.
And so finally you get it going and then all of a sudden you have a team and now you have to learn how to delegate. And then you're delegating, but you're still managing and watching and solving all the problems. And then you have to realize, oh, I have to give this away. Like I am becoming the bottleneck. And that moment where folks realize I'm not taking a vacation, I'm not sleeping, I'm stressed out because I'm the bottleneck. That's kind of the spot that I step in. But yeah, it takes a village. And I'm not and I know my niche, right? Like this is what I do really well. If you have 10 folks, you're approaching 10 folks, your plan is to scale to 100 folks. That's my niche. I don't fit it. I don't do the marketing side of things. I can do a little bit. I know it well enough to help you not sound like a fool, but no, that's not me. And I'm cool with that not being me.
Good. That's leadership. That's delegation.
And you come in and you're like, hey, let me help you put the business side to your product. Or, hey, VCs, let me help you see the market side of this really cool product. So you kind of bridge that gap in between the two communities, right?
We're the bridge. We're the bridge, and then we help train each person that wants to figure out how to get along the bridge from A to B.
Yeah. So making connection then is kind of your life. You're Mr. Connection. You're making connections is your livelihood. Tell me about this crazy trip you took to New York. How does that fit in with all that? Was that just a young man sowing his wild? Well, that's a bad phrasing. Was that just a boondoggle or was there some strategy behind it? Why did you take off and spend, was it 2 weeks, 3 weeks in New York?
It was 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks.
3 weeks. All right. How many people did you meet? Why did you do it? What did you get out of it? Was it a success? Talk to me.
First and most important. Grandma and grandpa are there. Got to check in on them and see if they're okay. Haven't seen them in over 9 months, a year. So it was very important for me to just check in because, you know, they're getting older and hopefully they have many more years left to go. So that was priority number one. Second, that was beyond business. I just wanted to see them. They were in the New Jersey area. Second was proximity. I think proximity, especially as you're starting out, is where it's at. I think
proximity. Oh my goodness. Continue. Yeah, I'm going to jump on this, but yes, go.
Yeah. Feel free. That's why I think Kentucky, when we were there, was so important because you had a high proximity of 150 plus people in the same space in Owensboro, Kentucky, together, which ended up being a highly valuable, concentrated space for all of us. So in New York, proximity is so prevalent there. I could go from one event with 8 people at a lunch that I was invited to, where there was a startup lawyer, there was a different type of like executive leadership programming person who runs programs all across the US, all these others, to then 30 minutes later, I go to a 2-on-1 with 2 potential co-founders of the company. So I think to answer your questions one by one, I met around, and by met, I mean like actually got to know and developed a good relationship. I either knew them before or probably met around 50 people. And those people were,
you met 50 PIP people in
yeah,
essentially 20 days.
yeah, probably at minimum 50.
And this is not just people that you met, but this is not like you're like liking people's Facebook
No,
profile. These are like key movers and shakers.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off there real quick and talk about the importance of proximity. This is one of the, I remember when I learned this, I learned it in the context of corporate world. The people in power are constantly talking about you, or they're not, but either way is very important. Let's say that let's say that somebody was going to move from this department to that department. It means we have a backfill we need to do. We were thinking about who is that backfill a year before the transition was going to happen. Like, and we were grooming that person. We were bringing them into conversations. We were testing them with slides. I realize I used probably the wrong word there, but we were preparing them. We had identified them. We were preparing them. People are talking about you. Now, if you don't fill your time card in on time and you never get your training done and your work is always suspect, we're also talking about you behind your back in a closed room. The closer you are to power, the more success you're going to have. It just spills over. I cannot, and I say that living in Kentucky, like I totally understand the irony of my statement. But no, I remember when I saw you post this, I was like, that's a guy to follow. He is putting himself in the right rooms. Sometimes you get invited, sometimes you get put, and I loved it. All right. So you put yourself in the right room, money move, brilliant move. And you met 50 movers and shakers in 20 days.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. What else? Was it a success?
Yeah.
And do you get what you wanted? I think those are the next 2 questions.
Huge success. And then how did I define success? For me, there were 2 primary components. Success for this company in general was, one, I've come to a point where I realized I love to build. I would love it even more if I was building with a small group. So I met with a couple friends and friends of friends, and we shared the vision. And by the end, I mean, we had a 2-3 hour dinner together, a very, very long conversation. And if all goes well, they very likely will be a part of the team, which is huge because now they're all great in their respective divisions. And that, to me, I mean, I'm good at what I do, but I'm limited. I'm limited in many, many areas. So then to have them come in and add so many more layers, that's huge. Then, yeah.
So I want to jump off that real quick.
Yeah.
You get to this spot really quickly in which it's about like just postmasters, in which you decide I'm in this game to get credentials or I'm in this game to be with people, right? Really smart people. And there's some folks that get their PhDs. I'm going to leave it there. There's some folks that get their PhDs and they're very proud of how smart they are. And there's other folks that get their PhDs and are very proud of the rooms they get to be in. Right. And the world is like, the other way I kind of say the same idea is the smarter you get, the more you realize, the less you know, right? You
Right.
become aware of your ignorance. And so meeting great people and getting to be on a team with them is such a privilege because hey, that's not me. I don't got that skill set, but they have that skill set. That's super cool.
One of my favorite things too, if you want a humbling exercise, I did this in college, walk into a library.
Okay.
And then look around, see all the books, and ask yourself, do I know this information? And once you realize you know next to nothing, the thought is, oh, okay, there's more to learn. There's much more to learn.
Yeah, that's an amazing idea. Walk into a library and evaluate how much you really know. Yeah. The other way I've heard it said is if you imagine somebody putting a balloon around your head, you know everything on the surface of that balloon, right? It's just your head. But you start blowing that balloon up and you start realizing next, like the bigger the balloon gets, the bigger the world that you understand gets, the less of it you know. But like when it's really small, oh yeah, I know everything there is to know. Anyway.
I'm a big believer in that. I think then surrounding yourself with the right people, that's really where you get to learn the most. I think it takes a big gulp to be able to process that. Like, I really don't know as much as I need to know. But then once you get past that point and realize all these other amazing people also have shared experiences and knowledge that you all can mutually learn from and benefit from, that's where it's fun. Like this podcast that you're doing is a great idea. You're learning from a lot of brilliant minds. I'm not counting myself on that, but you're learning from a lot of amazing people, and then that adds to what you're building.
Yeah. So one of the things, I'm just going to touch on this one lightly. I don't want to belabor it, but I love the fact that the people that you're planning to build the next thing with, you met in this trip. And I think that there's a error in judgment that Daniel Kahneman talks about, that the people you grew up with or the people that you went to college with or whatever, you have this little sphere and you're like always trying to make it, whatever it is, work with this group of people. But you met 50 new amazing people, 2 or 3 of them, which you're maybe going to be building something with. You didn't know them before this trip. Like your destiny, and I'm talking to the audience here, your destiny is probably tied up with somebody you don't know right now. Get out there and meet them. It's like, here, that gets me jazzed. All right. So back to you. You met these amazing folks. You got some folks that maybe you're going to do some founding with. What else? What were other takeaways from the trip?
A couple other takeaways were, I mean, right now I've been based in Las Vegas. This is my hometown. This is where I'm born and raised. This is where my family's at. I am Vegas proud. Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
Now, proximity doesn't always apply here. Unless I was working in the casino and gambling industry, it's not as relevant to what I'm building right now. Maybe it will change in the future. Yeah, so right. I think one of I told a friend recently, I said, I got 6 months worth of work done in 3 weeks because I forced myself to say, you know what, sometimes you need to change your environment. I am changing my environment and let's see what happens, because sometimes it's not me. It's just the environment. That's where I'm at. And I think, so a couple huge takeaways was, one, if it's not working, like change your environment if you can. 3 weeks is an extreme. I happen to not have 4 kids, hopefully soon at some point in my life, maybe even more, but I don't have that yet. And I think I have the luxury to be able to go for a week, 2 weeks. So however, if you're in that position, if you can go for 2 days, 3 days, stack up meetings, plan. I mean, what I did is I stacked up as much as I can. My friend Josh Ettinger said, Blake, all these people that you want to meet, make sure that you nail down at least 10 of them that you prioritize, that you cannot leave without speaking with them. And then make sure once you've met them, then add spaces for everyone else that you think is still absolutely relevant. So then I would mix between 1-on-1s, 2-on-1s, 4-on-1s, and then group events that I wouldn't lead. And then I would host my own little small events too. So I would batch all that in. By the end of it, I ended up meeting a nice chunk of people. One of them was the former chief of staff of Carta. Another is the chief of staff of Morning Brew. Amazing people, really,
cool.
really people. And just because I was there in the right time, right place, and I think they'd be helpful to the bigger picture of what I'm building. Hopefully it's helpful to them as well. But that was a huge takeaway, is get there, change environments if you need to. And then,
you talk about environments. One of my favorite stories on that is you can buy a bottle of water in the store and it's $1. You buy a bottle of water at the gas station, it's $2. You buy a bottle of water at a sporting stadium and it's $15.
In Las Vegas, $30.
It's Las Vegas, $30 in the big sphere. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, some of that's about scarcity, right? But it's about environment. Get where it is happening. There's a spark happening somewhere. And it's a little bit rude for you to be like, well, it needs to come to me. No, the go-getters will go get it. Right. So I love that.
And it probably won't. It probably won't come to you. And it might.
Won't.
I mean, it might if you have great systems. If you're great, I'm telling, that's not where I'm holding presently. I don't have as great of systems where it just all comes in. That's great. Inbound, that's great. Whatever. For now, that's not where I'm holding. And I think for most, when they're starting out at the earlier stages, you gotta go. For me, in my head, I was like, I need to go and put some fuel.
Yeah. No, my probably like the moment that my life went from this to click like this is I had a boss. He took me out for coffee, which is one of the reasons I literally have coffee money in my budget to take people out for coffee because of John.
Good.
He took me out for coffee and he goes, Drew, you have to leave. And I was like, why? He's like, well, you clearly are wanting the next promotion and you'll be ready for it in 5 years, except the work that we do here isn't the work that'll make you qualified to do it at the next level. Like you have to go get a research project that belongs to you, run it, break stuff, test stuff, figure stuff out, do late nights, do, early mornings. You got to go do it. Otherwise nobody will, you got to get your chops. You got to earn your stripes. And so I did. I went to Texas and another mentor invited me out for coffee. It was funny. There's 3 of us brand new hires. We're sitting around in the cubicle. Brad walks by and goes, hey, I want to go for a coffee. It's like 10 in the morning. He's like, I'm ready to go for coffee. It's our first day of work. Like nobody has anything to do. We are literally just like, we've already done all of our training. Like it's horrible. Anyway, we're just sitting there waiting around to get our computers. And the other 2 guys were like, no, I don't want to go. What? Something in my gut, I can't take credit for being smart. Something in my gut, I think you and I would both call it God, said, no, you're going. And that began a father-son relationship with me and this guy named Brad. He kind of became my surrogate father for 5 years, taught me a lifetime worth of amazing stuff. Politics. When you're in research, everything's politics. I don't know. Like it doesn't seem that there should be politics in like engineering, like it should be very sanitized and best idea wins, but no, it's all about budget. It's all about politics. It's all about anyway, he walked me through all that stuff. But it was because I was open to that, you gotta take the step. You gotta move. If I hadn't moved, if I haven't followed John's advice and moved, and if I hadn't had coffee with Brad, I wouldn't have any of the patents that I have today. You gotta go when the good Lord nudges you. You gotta take your flight.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had an amazing trip. What's next for you? So you got some friends, you got some connections. Well done. Now, how do you take that and 10x that?
So we've already ran through 3 programs. We've trained 48 professionals. A mix of them are MBA students. A mix of them are.
Whoa. You trained how many people?
This was not post New York. This was in aggregate in total. Yeah.
Oh, aggregate. Okay, that's still impressive. It's still impressive. Go ahead.
We've trained 48 professionals at this point, and we've trained around 10 to 15 founders as well. So we've gotten some good traction, and around 11 professionals, not directly because of us, but definitely we've helped, got full-time jobs in venture, which was great.
All right. Well, 48 trained, 15 founders trained, and 11 folks placed, or at least the connections made, and then they got jobs. Like that's a lot of economic development.
Yeah.
For a non-governmental, I think jobs created, you're starting to tick up there, my friend.
Yeah. And it'd be really, really cool to be able to partner with different economic development agencies and help with regional, local employment, all that stuff. I think that's a big part of it. But I think what's next, to answer your question, is once I'm finalizing up one thing that I'm excited about, so maybe for next time, but I think post that is we'll create our next program. I only like to do it with people that we vet thoroughly. Either I know them very well or friends of friends know them very, very well. So we're probably going to create our next program. That will probably be in the next couple months. I don't have the exact date, but I know that we have all the VC speakers ready to go lined up. We have people in the ecosystem ready to go lined up. Just they're a call away. I just need to say, hey, here's the program and here's dates. They're happy to come in. And then now it's just really setting up the next program. So I think that will be in the next couple months.
That's super exciting. And what I'm excited about the energy or the activity, but what I'm really excited about is your phrasing is in the next couple of months. I think that we think in terms of, I just need to make it. Like there's like this breakthrough, but no, success is about being on that hamster wheel and doing the thing that you're supposed to do, making the connections and building the momentum, right? I think John Maxwell calls it the law of momentum. Jim Collins calls it, no, John Maxwell calls it Big Mo, and Jim Collins calls it momentum. I love it. That's super exciting.
But on the flip hand, breaking momentum and building it back up, that's a skill in itself. That takes.
Okay, I'm going to pull on that. So you're talking like when you realize you're in the wrong direction and it's time to turn, or why do you want to break momentum?
Because if you realize you're in the wrong direction, then you realize it wasn't even momentum in the first place. It's more of, if you were building up momentum and let's say some meteor landed and then all of a sudden you can't do what it is that you're going to be able to do for the next X amount of time, then building it back either to where it was, or maybe you'll never be able to build it back to where it was, but take a different direction. That momentum is an intangible that is so critical. It's so critical.
I tell people on their corporate jobs all the time, because I've been in the rooms in which we had this conversation, in the non-corporate world, it's projects you've started and completed successfully. In the corporate world, it's projects that you brought in on time or budget or whatever, or promotions. But there's a certain expected trajectory or rate of success. So I get a promotion every 2 or 3 or 4 years, right? Boom, boom, boom. If you stall out for whatever reason, the reason doesn't matter. But if you stall out in the hiring conversations, that question, they haven't been promoted in 4 years. What's up with that? Yeah. Like the break in momentum, ka-chunk, is a thing. It's not even an intangible. It's literally discussed. Like, well, what happened? Why did it stall? Is that the same way in the venture space? If somebody like is not building their company fast enough, or they like built a company and then they stalled, does that come up in those conversations?
This is, what I've seen, not to speak for the whole space, but just from what I've seen, that's definitely one of the challenges. Is company comes in, company has good potential, good scalability, good team. What we spoke about before, venture fund says, okay, we're ready to go. It's not that simple, but I'm super simplifying it for this example. Let's say they put in money. The thing now is because funds have been placed into the business, now the business is expected to grow extremely fast. That's one of the difference between just a regular business loan, because startup or small businesses, just need a loan to get X materials or all this stuff set up. The different perspective is now we've put in money and therefore we expect you to grow to a massive number. Like 50 million, 100 million, things that the brain can't even wrap its head around. My brain can't wrap its head around of how large of quantities. And because of that, if they're not at that very fast growth rate, if something happens, good luck. I'm not saying you can't build it, but because there's a thing that exists in the industry called the power law in the venture industry, which basically is like, if they have a portfolio of, let's say, 100 companies, chances are most of their portfolio is returned when 1 or 2 of those companies succeeds. The rest, unfortunately, they don't get as much love and attention that they really deserve, because these are great companies. However, they're not reaching that level that returns the fund. And because of that, creates a lot of problems, which is why I see challenges in the industry in itself. But you're right, that if there's momentum and they've put in a lot of money and it breaks, it's very hard for that company to recover. Very hard.
And the founder kind of carries that with them sometimes. But this is why you need a coach. We've talked about this. You need an ecosystem and you need a coach, because I don't care who you are. I guarantee you what got you here, which was being the best in class, can't get you up that power curve, because now you're the bottom of a brand new class and there's a whole new deck of skills you got to learn. Well, that's exciting, man. So how can my audience get connected with your next launch? How can we follow you? How can we get connected? What do we do? We can jump on your website, I think, right? And that's backpackvc.io.
This one, so I'm revamping it, but this is the basic version. This is mainly geared towards our founders, but it also is, I'll update it also for the audience that we mentioned before, which is basically working professionals that are full-time, that are interested in the startup ecosystem, and then also professionals who want to break into the VC landscape and get into the venture world full-time. So that's how they can reach me. They can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very good with LinkedIn. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn.
This is very true. From personal experience, I think that I was given your number, I think, but yeah, definitely LinkedIn is how we did a lot of communication.
Definitely LinkedIn's that's probably the best way to reach me. Just share that you run the Drew Sutton, that you listen to the Drew Sutton Leadership podcast, and that will be the easiest way to reach me for sure.
Yeah. Cool. So we're going to wrap up here. Let me just kind of go through some stuff that you've said. One of the things you said is that VCs and founders don't speak the same thing. Founders think in terms of product fit, which is great, but VCs think in terms of market fit and team, like who is the right team and is the market right for it, which is completely different than product. And that's exactly what you help with, is you help train VCs to speak founder and train founders to speak VC. And then you also serve as that bridge, that connector between the two pools of clients. So if you want success on your next venture, whether that's a VC firm or that's a founder, get with Blake and he's going to help you navigate that path and maybe connect you some people that'll blow your mind.
I'll try my best.
Awesome. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I think the closing thought is, if you're not collaborating with Drew, he's the guy to go to. Drew's definitely the best. He's one of the most creative people I know. It's so much fun. Drew didn't tell me to say this, by the way. He did.
That's funny. No, I love Blake as well. It's been great. Guys, go check out Blake Weissman at BackpackVC.io and start something amazing.
All right.